Welcome to the Best Music Podcast, where we see behind the curtain and discover the hidden habits and success secrets of noteworthy music makers so you can speed up your journey to your dream music goals by taking what you need from their wins and lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Dan Spencer, and this week's featured guest is Javier Rosario. Guitar virtuoso, composer, bandleader, educator, and recording artist, Javier Rosario attended the world-renowned Berklee College of Music with a full-ride scholarship. Amazing. In 2010, Javier earned his master's degree at the Longy School of Music of Bard College, where he was awarded a presidential scholarship. Javier has performed with Joe Lovano, John Lockwood, Matt Savage, Zachary King, Scott Kiefner, Aaron Holthus, and Avery Logan, just to name a few. He is a guitar adjunct professor at Bunker Hill Community College and member at Community Music Center of Boston, Passim School of Music, Amigos School, and Morse School in Massachusetts. Javier received the Community Music Center of Boston Marilla MacDill Award for Teaching Excellence and Community Service. He has been a visiting professor at the National Conservatory of Music since 2009 and a visiting artist and music thesis judge for the International Music Program at Universidad Pedro Enriquez Urena. I am so sorry about my pronunciation. Javier's new album, Yes, is out now wherever you listen to music. Links are in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast and in the video description if you are on YouTube. Javier, congratulations on having a new album, which is called Yes! Out now everywhere.
Well, I'm extremely happy because the name of the album actually came to me on the first podcast with you. And I'm like, oh, this needs to be the name for the album, because I was struggling to find, a name that will resonate with me. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it.
So we talked a lot last time we got together about saying yes to everything. So it's like if there's a mistake, say yes to it and turn that mistake into something new. Yeah. If you're in a collaboration and there's an idea, instead of saying, well, just say yes to it, try it out. And so we talked a lot about how you operate successfully from a framework and a mindset of yes.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful, incredible. It's abundance mindset. It's like, is there an opportunity? Yes. Are we going somewhere? Yes. So what I actually would like to start with is talk a little bit more about this, but maybe in a way that I didn't ask you last time.
Okay.
So last time, I don't think we talked about your journey getting to a full ride scholarship for Berklee, your journey getting to a presidential scholarship for your master's. And for people who don't know, getting the full ride to Berklee is not the easiest thing to do. And there's a lot of people who want it. It's very high competition, and you have to show up at a very high level of preparedness and also demonstrate you have an ability to grow past where you are currently to be awarded this scholarship. So can you talk a little bit about how you prepare for large things? This could be getting a scholarship. This could be getting an album together, and how you bring this yes mindset to bring you to a high level of performance.
Well, your level of preparedness has to be at 100%. It's just like you're dreaming, you're living that reality before you get there. So, for instance, if I have a really important show that I'm going to play, I practice the repertoire every single day, and I play the repertoire in order, and I even change the effects on the guitar when they are supposed to be changed for every tune. I will just run the exact show on my own many times, and we'll record it and we'll critique it and all that. And I think for me, I even see myself driving to the place. So I will sit down and meditate, and I will even go for the drive and playing the music on the radio and everything, or I will be walking or taking the train, so that when I finally do it, I live that reality so many times that there is nothing new that's going to make me stumble or get me out of the road or anything like that, so that I know where I'm headed. And I like knowing, for sure. So in terms of the scholarship, what happened was that I finished high school, I think, a year earlier than the usual age, I think at the age of 16. And then I began practicing, I don't know, 13 hours a day, because I had nothing better to do. So I was out of college, so while my friends were already, I was out of high school. And when my friends were already starting college, I was just at home practicing. And then I heard that a scholarship was going to be awarded to a Dominican instrumentalist. And then I looked up the requirements and all that, and I just prepared for it. And when I showed up, it really showed in my playing, in my personality, that was just fully committed to it. And they sort of like measured, I think, your age with your level of preparedness, with your personality, how much you have studied, and in terms of how many years you've been playing the instrument, where are you now? Meaning, what's the projection with this particular person? Where can this person be playing wise 10 years from now? And what do you see, how do you see yourself in 10 years, and what are you going to do to get there?
So tell us a little bit about this visualization that you are using in your preparedness, because what you're doing essentially, you're saying yes to yourself, and you're saying yes to the situation before you even get there. So you're practicing having a yes outcome, and you're practicing every step of the way it being a yes. So tell us a little bit about when you're visualizing, even the car ride, like, are you putting yourself in a state where you would want to be? Are you hearing songs that you would want to hear, all to bring yourself to the optimal moment right before you step on stage, that as you step on stage, you are just total yes?
Yeah, and even say, for instance, like I will even in my head, when I meditate and visualize all these things, I will even walk on stage, smile, plug in the guitar, do all of these things, grab the guitar pick step by step, so that I'm already there, so that I live that experience before, and then I don't get anxiety or something like that, so that nothing is new, and I sort of like, I gain control of the situation, so that I'm as prepared as I can be, not just on a musical sense, but in a spiritual level, in a mental level, in an emotional sense. I'm just there with it, and I've lived that experience before. I sort of like prepare on every level possible, so that when I'm performing, I sort of like get out of the way. Because my best playing always comes out when I let the music take over. It's basically like I'm just breathing as deeply as I can. I'm in the moment, I'm saying yes to the present moment, and I let my hands guide the playing and take me somewhere new. And I think that for me is just so rewarding when I let the music take over, and I don't exactly know, and I'm not judging it or premeditating anything, but I just let my hands go. But me having the speed that I have on the guitar, I sort of like always aim for that, because that's so thrilling, Yeah, so that's how I go about it.
The speed on the guitar is thrilling. Tell us more about that.
The speed of the guitar is really thrilling for me. That's just like, oh man, like I'm always aiming for that, because it makes me incredibly happy. And I have an internal speed that I sort of like try to get out through the guitar. And when I do, it's just so fulfilling, but it's just so expressive. It's like having a conversation with your closest friend that is so exciting. Oh my God, did you see this? Did you see that? That's the same thing with the guitar. I'm having a conversation with my closest friend, basically. And it's just like at 1,000 miles an hour.
Wow. Now, to bring us back to this visualization idea, just to point this out to people, there's been people like Napoleon Hill wrote about this a long time ago. Oprah Winfrey talks about visualization. Tony Robbins talks about visualization. Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about visualization. Formula One race car drivers talk about visualization. This is not something that is a one-off, that like Javier is the only person on earth doing this and he's the only one it's working for. Other people who have achieved many degrees of success in many disparate and different fields have used visualization and use visualization to say yes to themselves, to prepare themselves. So, Javier, can you tell us about a time where you did not practice the visualization and you had a suboptimal outcome, so we could learn from the mistake I'm assuming you've done it at least once, perhaps incorrectly. So please don't take offense that I'm assuming that you are to a degree human and likely have made a mistake. But I'm going to assume over the course of your life, one time you're like, you know what, I got this. And then you went and did it, and it didn't turn out so well. So tell us about that time.
Oh, it's almost like a car crash. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous. But I never did it again. It's like once you crash, you try not to do it again. But I sort of like needed that experience to be able to learn from it, and not necessarily, and basically respect the music, because it doesn't matter if I've played a tune 1,000 times. There is harmony that I have to play over. That's really complicated to sort of like negotiate it on the guitar. And if I don't practice it weekly or something like that, it really goes away. And when you're talking about hard repertoire, you really need to practice it every single week or it goes away. And once it goes away, you have to relearn it. And it's absolutely frustrating when I have to relearn that thing because I let it go. So yeah, that experience was actually for someone's record. And I'm not going to tell you which record, but I'm going to tell you that I have never listened to the record and don't want to
gosh.
either. I know. And I did prepare as much as I could, but I could have done more. I just trusted myself that it was going to come out in the moment when I needed it, which now at my level it does. But back then, 10 years ago, it did not. So I never listened to the album and don't want to either.
Man, painful lessons, but when they're painful, it can galvanize us into action to make sure we never, Javier, you never want to experience that pain again, right?
No, and I don't want to go through the pain of listening to it. So I'm staying away from pain. That's saying yes to being happy. And to comment on the Napoleon Hill, so your comment about Napoleon Hill and so many people that do visualization, I read the Napoleon Hill book. It's called Think and Grow Rich. I absolutely love that book. And then, of course, that's where Abraham Hicks comes from, I think. So I definitely love the work of Abraham Hicks, and that has helped me quite a lot. The first person that talked to me about visualization, I actually read that on a magazine. I read that on on a piano magazine. I have a friend that plays piano. His name is Michel Camilo. He sent me an article that he wrote for a magazine talking about mental practice. And I read the article and I sort of like was ready to receive that information because I understood what it was immediately. And on some level, I must have been doing that before. So say, for instance, that you sit in the car or you're driving or doing whatever and you are listening to music and sort of like see myself on the neck of the guitar playing. That's mental practice right there. So I sort of like, you take it across the street, you take it to the next level when you sit down and prepare for a show like that. But I do prepare as much as I can.
I think visualization too, we could add some nuance to it because I don't think visualization is right for everyone all the time. So for example, I've had times in my life where I had so much anxiety inside of myself that it was taking up like 80 to 90% of my brain space. And so then to try and have a moment where I am, instead of relaxing to address the 80, 90% anxiety, but instead putting that into trying to do mental practice, it's not as effective. It's like if you're already out of breath and then you're going to go try and run, it's you don't have the capacity. So I would just like to clarify this for people where it's like, yes, go do the visualization. Yes, go read Napoleon Hill, all that stuff. And if for whatever reason you have something going on inside of your brain that's stopping you from being able to really relax and access everything else, that's a higher level problem you need to handle first. Yeah. Like that's most important. It's like you need to be able to say yes to yourself as a fully integrated human being. You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, you're just not going to move as fast and it's not going to be as satisfying.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, that happened to me once at a jazz festival that I was actually the leader of the trio. And I remember that I began to feel anxiety right before the performance. And I remembered something that I must have read somewhere or that I actually got from, what's his name, from Eckhart Tolle, spiritual teacher. And he said that when you have anxiety, you sort of like feel it on the left side of your chest. And I remember that he said, look at it. And I focused all my attention right there on my chest, on my left side. And I looked at the anxiety. and I paid attention to it for a couple of minutes, and it dissipated like that. So that's something that I do, that when I am giving attention to something and that particular thing is just amplifying within me, I can also turn the attention inward to see what is going on. And then I can take a long deep breath, I can focus on my breathing, I can focus on how I'm feeling, and I can be there for me. So there is a part of me that is there for the music, but it's a part of me that's there for me as a human being first before I get to the music, to prepare myself emotionally for it, to make sure that if I'm sad one day, angry, anxious, whatever emotion I'm feeling, that I can sort of like address that within myself, and then I'm there to serve the music. But I have to take care of the person first before I can take care of the music.
It's a fascinating hierarchy of yeses. Right? Because like the hierarchy of yeses is, first you need to get yourself as a human person to yes. And then what you're doing, the music, the relationship, the person you're talking to, whoever, then you can be present for that. But it's like, if you have other things on the human level, we could also, instead of hierarchical, we think of it like circles, right? So inside, we're here, right? And if this isn't good, then everything else outside of it's not going to be good too.
Yeah.
So, Javier, you've now brought up, I think, 3. You said Napoleon Hill, you said someone after Napoleon Hill, and you said
Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle, yeah.
Wow, okay, cool. And in terms of breathing practices, who do you go to? Or what type of breathing practices do you use?
Oh, I just focus on my breathing as deeply as I can. So say, for instance, and you're a singer, so you know this, that if you are breathing and you bring your head up or down or sideways, you're compressing the air tract. So then tendons actually begin right here on the neck. And then when I tense up my neck, up or down or left and right, it's like doing this to my wrist when I play. I don't want that. So then the faster I play, the deeper I have to breathe for my hands not to basically get tired when I'm, doing NASCAR racing on the guitar. So then I sort of like remind myself that breathing has 2 major important things for me. Number 1, it keeps me in contact with my body. It keeps me present. And also, just something that I shared with someone just recently, I bring my home wherever I am. When I learn that thing, that I can feel the anxiety here, and I can look at it and I can feel it, sort of like bringing attention to it, I realized that I bring my home with me wherever I go. I had this conversation with a couple of people just recently, that since I have to travel for work, they tell me, well, I don't like to leave my home, or every time I leave my home, I just want to come back, I get homesick or something like that. I sort of like bring music with me in the car. I do things wherever I am that I will do at home, like go for a walk, call a friend, but I always bring my breathing with me so that I can stay present. And once I get my breathing as deeply as going, as deeply as possible, as soon as I get my breathing going as deeply as possible in my body, as deep as possible in my body, God, I'm struggling with my words, but it doesn't matter. I feel relaxed, I feel connected, I feel present, I feel like I can do things, I feel like anything is possible on the guitar, but that's to be seen, So once I plug in the guitar, then I know if the gig is going to be okay or whatever. But I basically am connected to my breathing because it brings me to the present moment, but also allows for my body to function in a way that I like behind the guitar.
So I think there's 2 things people could look up if they want more. One would be how to belly breathe, so how to actually breathe using your belly, because that's really the way you can counteract anxiety. If you're breathing up in your chest, it can actually increase anxiety. And then also look up things like box breathing and triangle breathing, I think would be 2 useful tips there. But to bring the conversation back to you, let's talk a little bit about your process for creating instrumental music, because when people write songs, we know that there's going to be lyrics that tell a story with a melody. That's the definition of a song, is that there's words and a melody. When you're creating instrumental music, you are not bound to words. You don't have to have a melody that's some coherent type of statement before. You can kind of just jump in and rock and roll. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe pick one song off the album and just talk about the process of how that song came to be?
Yeah, so while my music, it doesn't have words, it definitely tells a story. So I sort of like treat the notes that I'm playing not as sort of like my fast NASCAR racing on the guitar, but sort of like as my motifs. The other day I was playing a gig and I began playing as motivic as possible in developing the motif, and I actually got people to clap. Because people were connecting with it. So say for instance the opening track, so it's The Road Ahead. Then the melody starts. And then we go back and there is a repetition, and then there is a variation. So right there, it's like you have a call and response right there, but it's all related to it. So and there's the resolution right there, and then I get, I don't know, naughty, and I just go with distortion, and then we go back to the beginning, sort of like a recapitulation. Like, hey, do you remember this thing I told you? And it's kind of like that. But I just thought of a fun tune, and I probably began searching for these sounds, I guess, when I was just expressing the joy that I feel when I travel for work. So, you know, you have two sides of Javier, the one behind the guitar, the one that's not behind the guitar. So when I'm behind the guitar and I know that I have to go play somewhere, there is just this rush of excitement. And I just get super excited, especially playing with my friends. That doesn't matter where I have to travel, I sort of like bring that joy with me the entire trip, and then I go and shred. Now, there is the other side of me that's not necessarily the opposite, but for instance, I don't like traveling by myself when I'm not behind the guitar at all. I sort of like dread that. But when I'm the one that's going to play, then I sort of like go everywhere and anywhere, and I'm ready for it. So this song was sort of like about the excitement that I feel when I travel to play with my friends. And that's what that was about. That's why I wanted this one to be the opening track, because it's so high energy.
Okay, so did the initial riff idea come first? Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. Right. So I play that power chord, you know, we all know that a D power chord.
Yeah.
But then I sort of like asked myself, well, what can I do with it? And then I began moving the bass note, and then B minor, and then said, well, that's a B flat major 7, so I can just continue to move one note.
Even within that, to think of that as being a B minor, we could also think of it as being the 6, right? So we could think of it as basically you're going 1 flat 7, 6 flat 6.
Yeah. So then I thought, well, this sounds super cool. I certainly like it, and I wanted a tune that will just groove and make people dance. So then this is actually my opening tune for all of my shows.
Okay.
So this is part of sort of like the process that I have built. When I used to study with MacDill at Berklee, he used to tell me that when he was playing with Gary Burton, they will always open the show with a tune called Open Your Eyes, You Can Fly, or something. And then I never understood, and of course at that time I wasn't going to understand that, why you will choose a tune to open every show with that particular tune. Well, now I get it. Now I get it. You know, it's like, I know that this is fun. I know that this is a great opener. This always cheers me up, so I'm going to start there, you know, with a very strong number. So that's why I've chosen this one.
Okay. And so within the melody for this, obviously we have this really fun sort of flip from the major to the minor, because once we go to the flat 6, it really wants to pull us, maybe even implying a a 4 minor 6 chord, right? When we think about having that flat 6 in there, right?
Yeah. Oh, nice guitar.
Right? So, right, that B flat, wow, yeah, no. Yeah, the B flat would be the 3 of the G minor 6, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm on the right track. Okay. I know how music works. Right, and that's so. And so what happens is we have this sort of major minor thing going on in the melody that's beautiful. Now you get to the second section. Where does that second section come from? Is it you just played through the riff a bunch of times, you needed somewhere else to go? Was it a separate idea from a separate song? Where does that second idea come from?
This one.
Yes.
I'm not even sure that I came up with. I think that somebody that I was rehearsing with in New York years ago said, "Oh, I think that the way that I wrote it originally was." And he said, "No."
Right.
That's why you need to play with people who are better than you, because then they give you ideas. So I think that bass player in New York gave that idea of sort of like doing the stop time. And I liked it. And at first, probably I thought of it like, well, that's my tune. What are you doing with my tune? But then I sort of like put that side of me away, and I'm like, okay, what is it? So that was sort of like a learning process for me, that I needed to listen to what people around me were saying, because they also have great ideas, and that was a great one.
That's beautiful. So I guess what I'm really driving at here, Javier, is like, we could think about composing instrumental music from a purely melodic standpoint, right? And so what we would do is we would take a melody or a motif, and then we could develop that through whatever, extension, truncation, whatever you want, augmentation, diminution. There's many different ways we can take a motif, an idea, and change it, retrograde, flip it around backwards, interval inversion, all these different things that we can think about coming from really, the classical composers invented this mental framework, right? So we could think about composing instrumental music purely from the melody, right? And telling the story from the melody. Now, what's interesting is, as a guitarist, there's this culture of the riff.
Oh boy.
There's the culture of the riff. And so can you talk a little bit about when you're when the riff comes first and then you fit the melody to, because that's a good riff, right? So it's like, well we're gonna write a melody for this, right? And then sometimes when perhaps the melody comes first and then you say, well, what's the harmony going to do? Can you talk about that juxtaposition specifically from a guitaristic mindset, where it's like the riff reigns supreme in terms, like, it's always back there, right?
Yeah. So then for me, I think that I compose maybe from 3 angles. Okay. One, it can be that the harmony comes first, or it can be that the melody comes first and then I have to see what I hear behind it. But there is also listening to both of them at the same time. That one for me came much later in life. That one is probably just something that's kind of recent, I guess. But it will have to be, I think that I'm more harmony driven, and then I listen to the harmony in my head, and then I ask myself, what do I want to hear on top of that? And when I didn't have the speed that I have, actually the melodies were basically my solos, so I will just improvise, and since I didn't have speed at all on the guitar, I will say, well, that was very melodic, maybe that's going to be the melody. But then the challenge became over time, then how can I make the distinction between the melody and my solos? What a trip. But now I basically try to do it all together. So then I think that the intro that's on the album for The Road Ahead, what happened was that we did a couple of takes, and then I knew that I had to just snap my bandmates into playing just something new right there with me. And then I remember what Lovano said to me, that you have to come up with these little arrangements when you're in the studio to make the take new. And then I decided to play an intro. In the intro, really, I put it together a while before, trying to play the melody and the chords at the same time. Let's see.
Dude, that's sick. That's so good.
Then, no, I think I played. Or, oh, that's the chord that I played.
Dude.
So then, if I hear it, just the harmony first or the melody first, and I will try to put it all together to sort of like challenge myself and put myself in a new space. I'm always trying to learn a new thing, and I always try to encourage my students to not stay with the minor pentatonic, but to learn something else.
Wait, what do you mean? Javier, please, what else exists when you pick up a guitar besides the minor pentatonic? Like, there's other things you can play?
Maybe.
Maybe? The truth is out there somewhere.
Exactly, somewhere.
Somewhere. Okay, so you have these three ways where you're going to write instrumental music, right? So either melody first, then chords, either chord, and again, I'm going to simplify, I'm going to say chords, harmony, right? But within that, there's much variation. You could have a riff, you could have just general whatever. So we have melody, then chord, melody, then harmony, harmony, then melody, harmony, melody at the same time. Okay, so within that, when you're going through an instrumental, like, let's take this first song, it's like, piece. We have two separate sections with two separate ideas. Do both those ideas come to you at the same time, or do you get the first idea, then you wait for inspiration to strike and you get the second idea? So we have a framework of how you're writing, right? Which is melody, harmony. I'm sorry for repeating myself so many times. I'm sure
I like it.
Melody, harmony, harmony, melody, both at the same time. Okay, now let's talk frameworks in terms of going this way, right? So we've talked this way. Let's talk this way. So how many ideas in a row in general are coming out of you? Do you have these variations of ideas happening when you're inspired, or do you get inspired with one idea, you get inspired, come back with a second idea, and then you're fitting them together like puzzle pieces or some combination?
The best thing, the best thing that I can do is to record everything, because once an idea is out and I move on to the next one, if I forget it, I can just play it back. And then I have my whole puzzle, and then I can decide how I'm going to shape this. And I decide that by asking myself, what's going to move me emotionally? Meaning, when I'm going to play this, I'm only going to play this because it's going to make me feel good. I'm only going to travel somewhere to play because it's going to make me feel good. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. So then, for me, it's like I start with the first idea, which is, it has so much joy and excitement every single time. The first idea of a composition for me. Then I ask myself, what do I want to hear next? And then I go for that. And the way that it moves me emotionally is telling me if that's really what I want or not.
Okay, so when you're doing this writing session, is this you just with a record, like jamming with a band, or are you by yourself? Both combinations?
With my phone, just recording. And then if I forgot something or whatever, or if I want to, maybe I play the melody and then I click play and then I play the chords behind it to hear the way that it's supposed to sound like, or whatever. But I definitely have that available to me, and I always have a bunch of paper, and I have so many pencils all over my room, you have no idea. I have about 9 of them. Just on this table here, and right behind the laptop, I have a bunch of them, because then I always drop them, just like guitar picks.
Yeah.
So I have them all over so that I can just grab the next one. That's just how it works for me. I have no idea. Like, right in front of me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pens.
We need to get you, like, you've seen like machine gunners with like bullets just draped across their shoulder. We need to get you one with just pencils and the other one just with guitar picks, and then you're gonna be fine.
Well, I have to tell you, like, I was playing a gig last weekend, and for the first time in a while, I actually dropped a pick on stage. And the reason why I use these ones is because they have a grip.
Yeah.
So when I hold it, I don't drop the pick. And I actually dropped the pick. That was so embarrassing. So I literally just stopped playing, grabbed the pick, and then shredded even harder.
Dude, look, This is the best solution I've ever found. So I actually loosen this up. I loosen up the cover of the nut at the top of the guitar, and then if you're listening to audio, I loosen up what's covering the nut on the headstock of the guitar, and then actually stick picks in sideways. So I always have 2 extra picks. And then if you want to go fancy...
But what do you suggest I do?
Well, I don't know.
What should I do?
Maybe some duct tape?
There's nowhere to put the picks. This is like... So I just have to just like, So I basically just keep another pick on the music stand or right on top of the amp behind me so I can just...
We'll get you something. There's little sticky things you can put that hold picks. We'll get you one to put on the top, which I don't know. Look, it's like aesthetically that's very streamlined. I don't know if you want to mess with the look and have like a little like tree of picks. Of the top. You could have them colored. You could do different colors. You could do like rainbow colors at the top. Dude,
I'm into it.
Let's go.
Sweet. So that happened to me. Is that a gig just recently? And I know those sorts of things that happen remind me that I'm human, that it is okay, and that I can also have fun.
Okay, so ballpark, how many hours of recorded material approximately did you have for the ideas on this new album, which is called Yes, which you can find anywhere music is streamed and sold?
Yeah, so then I think that we recorded about, in general, I will say that we had about 6 takes of each tune. So we were...
No, I'm sorry. To be clear, for you, in your preparation, when you're recording on your phone, like how many hours of recorded material do you have to then get the ideas for an album? So like what does that funnel look like?
Oh gosh, it's... I actually don't know how many hours, and I don't think there are that many to begin with. I sort of like try to keep the tunes as simple as possible, I'll say, because then it's also the reality that I have to juggle that on the stage. I have to lead the band, I have to play, and then I have to play tune after tune after tune, at times hour and a half without stops. So I sort of like have to be realistic about what do I want to write and how I want to execute it. But then for me, there are times that I actually don't even record it, but just write it down on a piece of paper, and I memorize it immediately. So I wouldn't be able to tell you, but it's also that reality of like, you write a bunch of tunes, and when you play it with people, it might work, it might not work, and you just have to let it go. So there were a bunch of tunes that I actually wrote that I played with the trio that I went, oh, never playing that again. Or, this needs a little bit of work. But then the ones that were good were really good, and then I did that. And when I thought that the album was going to be like an hour long or whatever, and then when it finally just like uploaded and it was out, I realized that it was only 7 tunes and it was only like half hour of music, and I'm like, man, this was a lot of work for only half hour of music. That was a lot of work for only half hour of music. And I sort of like wanted this album to be longer. I'm doing what I can. That's it.
So when you're doing this process of figuring out which tunes are going to make it onto the album and you're playing with the trio, are you playing with them in a rehearsal studio? Are you playing live and sort of getting the vibe from the crowd? Is it a combination of both that helps you make the decision and helps you get the accurate read on whether a song's good enough to actually go on the album?
Yeah, exactly. So all that, to be honest, nowadays what we're doing is like, I rehearse the music on my own, I practice a lot, I write it down as best as I can, I send it to the guys by email, and then I send them also a version of myself playing the tune so they can practice on top of it. And maybe we just go, we have a meeting, online, and then we go over the chart like that. But mainly we just play it live at a gig where you can do that. So that's not okay to do at a jazz festival, to play a tune that you have not rehearsed. But on a lower profile gig, it's okay for me to try a new tune. And then we do it like that. We don't rehearse that much anymore because we live a little bit, we live a couple of hours away. So I just sort of like train myself to be brave, to know that I can even play a solo version of a new tune and pull it off on the stage like that on my own. So I have been pushing myself to even go there, like approach the guitar like a piano player, that I can pull this off on my own without the band. But then I prepare enough and I prepare them enough, and then we go on the stage, and there is a lot of trust that we build a certain vocabulary and we know each other's behaviors on the instrument, so we can make it work. We can make it work and we can make it happen. However, if you're writing a symphony of 4 pages with a bunch of repetitions and you expect them to sight read that, then you're digging your own grave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I could have said that better, but
No, I get it.
pardon me.
No. You're everything you're saying is making total sense. Okay. I think it's also too, it's about like knowing who you're with, and there's such an interesting conversation to be had here, Javier, around strengths and saying yes to strengths, because it's like, listening to 2 of your albums now, and you even said it yourself, it's like, it's so abundantly clear how incredibly talented, gifted, and the work you've put into not just being an excellent guitar player, not just being able to play, but it's like your feel for harmonic movements and telling a story through chords. It's like not everyone reaches the level you have reached. Does that make sense? So it's like if I ate the same food, slept the same, and did the same training as Usain Bolt, he would still run faster than me.
So, the thing I tell my students is just, you know what? The most important thing I can teach my students actually, or share with someone, is how can you find your own version? How can you be you? So, say for instance, a couple of days ago, a student asked me, how can I connect my ideas all over the neck? And I said, well, I saw a YouTube video once of Alan Holdsworth saying that he will memorize the notes of the scales and he will map them out all over the neck of the guitar. Well, that didn't work for me, and I knew it back then. But then the question is, who am I with this subject? Who am I with this particular thing? That's what's going to get you to go deep into things, to find who you are.
Okay, so taking the example of Holdsworth, and by the way, if anyone wants to have your mind blown, there's videos on YouTube of Alan Holdsworth going through his visualization of different scales, and it is like, it's scary. It's
terrifying.
It is honestly terrifying. So Javier, how then do you let's take that idea of, we could think, and excuse me for a moment, everyone, I'm going to get very guitaristic for a second, but this principle applies to everything else. It's like, okay, we can think about guitar scales as being like, for example, the cage system, where we're going to think, if we're looking down at the guitar, it's these little squares, right, that we're moving up and down. Okay, then we can think of scales as being diagonal, where we do something maybe like three notes per string type of a thing, or even doing 2 notes per string, moving up and down. That way you get 2.5 octaves maybe out of a scale moving diagonally. Okay, then we could isolate 1 string at a time and play a scale on string, or we could go 2 strings. Then we could, if we really want to get, and then you can take this as far as you want to go. Then you do string skipping, then you take different techniques and put them over those ideas, right? So how do you personally take the idea of looking at what Alan Holdsworth did and take the parts that work for you and make you more you, and then leave the parts that are not going to make you more you?
Yeah, so then, for instance, what I realized immediately was, well, if I just learn all of the scales, which means, for instance, you will have the F major scale, and then the next one that will come is G Dorian, and so on and so forth. Let me just make sure that I can go from here to here, switching from mode to mode without stopping. Let me do the same on 1 string at a time, 2 strings at a time, skipping strings, and making sure that I can make it all the way through without stopping, and then increasing the metronome. And then applying that over chord changes. That way, when I'm improvising and I want to move to the next chord change, I don't have to skip. If I do that, it's really by limitation, it's not by choice. And if there is something that I aim for, is to do things by choice, not by limitation. So I'm always very aware of what my limitations are when I practice. And when I'm on stage, I'm not judging them. When I'm practicing, I definitely judge them, and I judge them hard. And then I come up with exercises or method or a solution for that particular thing that I'm struggling with, but I never leave it be or ignore it. That's not me at all with anything really in my life. So I'm very... Yeah, so I'm focused that way. So then I will just take all of the modes, go over them, improvise with them, and then apply them over chord changes. So that when I'm connecting my ideas, I don't have to jump. Jumping really kills the speed, and I'm against that.
If you're driving under 60 miles an hour, Javier will pull you over and give you a ticket.
I will sincerely do. But since that's going on the internet, I cannot tell you how fast I drive. No. I stick to the speed limit. Yes.
Oh no, I mean musically.
Sorry. I took it at a whole other level.
No. It was a joke metaphor. Where I was not actually attacking you as a person for driving fast or not driving fast.
Not driving fast.
We can neither confirm nor deny that Javier Rosario drives slow or fast.
Exactly.
To be clear.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm always pushing myself and pushing my hands as much as I can.
Right, okay, so now your student sits down and asks you a similar question. Your student asks you, how can I connect my ideas across the neck? What question or what advice do you then give your student once they ask you that question?
This particular one, I asked him, well, did you memorize the modes of the major scale that I asked you to memorize a year ago?
Pah! Did he? Did they?
A year ago, and he said no, and I said, well, that's your answer right there.
Right, okay.
That is your answer right there. So, just not being sassy right now.
Right.
I will just say, well, let's just play the major scale. Then G minor. Then can you connect them?
Oh, almost sounded like Bach. That was beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
So then trying to connect it, and then I will make it very specific. How about if I connect it from the first scale to the second scale, just on a string 6? And then the same thing with absolutely every string and every note. Can then and then beat to up, whatever. You can make it very, very specific, but at least that being able to walk around the guitar, as I call it, and not really miss a step.
For sure. And when we didn't even talk about some things you just did, which we were just talking about playing the scale from 1 to 8 or from 1 to 15. But you can also do every other note. You can skip notes. You can do all sorts of crazy things in there. And then you can bring rhythmic variations into play. So it's like the number.
It'll keep you busy for a lifetime.
Dude, 5. You know what it is? You know what it is, Javier? It's not that everyone can only play the pentatonic scale. It's that people have they've put their flag in the sand and been like, you know what? I'm just going to learn this one thing, and I'm going to learn it pretty well. And then, I'm going to be okay with it. And the beautiful part is, when you're just playing 1 flat 3, 4, 5 flat 7, you sound pretty good over anything. That's tonal. If it stays in the same, it's it doesn't sound bad.
True.
You have to try really hard to make the pentatonic scale not work over a 1 flat 7 flat 6. You have to literally try to not sound good.
It's a safe space.
Yeah, you have to have negative intent.
It is a safe space. No, and I love the pentatonic. In fact, one thing that I explore a lot is pentatonic applications over major, minor, dominant chords, and that, just so you can connect things within the pentatonic inversions and all that.
But see, even there, it's what we're really talking about right here. Nerd alert! We're talking about one mode of the pentatonic scale, because we can put the pentatonic scale into modes, and all of a sudden you get Lydian sounds out of the pentatonic scale and stuff. And it's it's so fun.
Yes. Yes, and also one thing that I want to share with you about the pentatonic, just because, there is a bird right outside my window, a blue jay. Hello, sorry. So then, say for instance that you have the major pentatonic scale.
Sure.
The minor one that we play is really a modal pentatonic, which is an inversion of the major.
Yeah.
But then how about if you apply 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 to the minor? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Oh, well, you're doing a raised 6 there, too. So you're actually implying a Dorian.
So then you can have a Dorian pentatonic or an Aeolian pentatonic.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 5. So then I'm playing the pentatonic, but with different notes, I guess. Not the inversion of the pentatonic, but there is so much to do. So, one thing that I encourage my students to do is just like have your curious child out all the time playing on the guitar so you can discover all kinds of new things. So that's me always with, the compositions on the album, playing guitar. So with my friends, joking around, whatever, but always having just like that, that fun side.
Man, Javier, how much would it be worth to you to get an extra 4 lifetimes worth of time just to explore more about music?
Man, I've been ready to go to heaven for a long time, so I don't know what you're talking about. I guess that it will be fun. I know that it's not possible, but I will definitely like to stick around forever and just even become a classical pianist and play Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev.
Oh, dude, I want to become a trumpet player just to
You do?
just to do like the horn parts from like Superstition by Stevie. Like just to be able to play those horn parts from Superstition, I want to become a trumpet player. Like, please.
That's fantastic. I just want to become a classical pianist. And I think that part of the reason why I approach the guitar this particular way with harmony is just because I'm so piano oriented, which I love it. Yeah. So the more influence you have from other instruments, I think the more unique your sound is going to be on your particular instrument. I'm just a very limited musician. I can only play guitar.
Well, I mean, but how you're not limited though. It's like limitations breed creativity, right? So we've talked about saying yes to things, but there's also a huge power in knowing what you're going to say no to so you can say yes to other things, right? So it's like, for you to say yes to making more albums and having the time, you must say no to becoming a classical pianist.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's like, for me to be able to eat a steak and vegetables at dinner, I must say no to eating chips all day, because if I ate chips all day, then I physically would not be able to eat a steak and vegetables with dinner.
There you have it. There you have it.
So, tell us a little bit about 1 or 2 things you do in music where you say yes to things by saying no to other things.
Oh gosh. So, the first thing that I really try to do is saying no to my phone. Because I have like 4 email accounts, social media, this and that. So my happiest moments are when I turn off my phone. And of course, the anxiety will kick in immediately and will tell me, what if something important happens and somebody needs to reach you? And I remind myself of something really funny, which is like, if you go for a walk at a cemetery, you're going to see a bunch of people there that thought that they were important and the world continued without them. And they are not worrying about a thing. Why should I worry about a thing? So then I put, so that's a good way to sort of like say no to all that, to the distraction, the phone, this and that, and just really sit down and breathe for about 10 minutes and then center myself, as I call it. And then I pick up the guitar and begin playing. And maybe I'll play some classical etudes on the guitar to warm up. If I have to warm up that day. And then I sort of like begin playing a tune, and I will ask myself, can I start that tune here instead of here? What haven't I done with this particular tune? Can I approach it? Can I approach my own music, not as the composer, but as an interpreter? Because if you open the real book and you get a new tune, you're playing it like you. Like somebody that just learning that for the first time and learning the possibilities. The issue becomes as a composer that you play it as the composer. I wrote this here and I wrote it here, but what will happen if you try something new? So you need to basically say no to that and then say yes to, I'm going to start in a different position on the guitar. I'm going to start with an inversion of that chord. And you might not love it, but it might take you on a new path and you might hear new things. And if you want to continue playing this music for years to come, you really need to keep it fresh and just like have an open mind. Sort of like open your mind like a parachute and land on your feet.
So to pull this out of guitar perspective, because one of the unique things about guitar is that you have multiple iterations of the same pitch class at the same octave register spaced out throughout the guitar, which is a very unique thing about the instrument. Whereas like on a piano, there's only one C4, but on the guitar, you can find 1, 2, 3, 4 C4s, and they all sound the same. So in guitar, you can push yourself by going to a different position. So if we pull this out of guitaristic speak and we bring it into a principle, so the principle, from what I'm hearing you say, is that whenever you are trying to find something new, or if you want to find something new but you don't know how to go about finding something new from something you've already created, is to play it like you're playing it for the first time, to interpret it or sing it, to go back and go to it with beginner's mind, is what I'm hearing you say. It's like blank slate.
Yeah, so say for instance, if this is the first chord of the road ahead, well, I don't want to play that. How about if I just go here? How about if I start here? And play an inversion of that chord, but something new, and it just gets me so excited. It gets me going. And then I ask myself, well, if this is the first chord, then I have the power to decide what do I want to play next. And then I'm saying yes to all sorts of new things on the guitar. And that's how I always approach the guitar, just something new. And might be that I crash, but it just makes me try again. And then what do I do with that mistake? And if it happens live, the recovery is far more important than staying on the safe side. I don't like staying on the safe side ever. I learn nothing from doing that. But I also have to know live that I have to deliver the show. So it's not like I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm not going to succeed. And even when you practice, I give myself an assignment in the moment that's sort of like on the edge of the knife, but in a way that I'm going to succeed, because you never want to create an image of self-failure when you're performing or recording or teaching or practicing or anything. You want to succeed. You want to be, trying to learn new things all the time, but you don't want to create an image of self-failure. That's very dangerous right there. So it's not to put myself in that position either.
So you saying no to defining yourself as a failure, because once we define ourselves as failures, you're right, it's very dangerous and sometimes difficult to come back from that. We want to define ourselves as having power, as having agency, as having ability. And so you're saying, like you say, it's a knife's edge that you're balancing on between saying yes to a challenge, but saying no to too much of a challenge that would tip you over, saying no to not having a challenge. It's a very, very interesting thing. But what you're doing is you're coaching yourself in your mindset, and also being your own teacher, right? Because as teachers, when we work with students, our job is to figure out where that knife's edge is and bring the student up to that knife's edge without allowing them to tip into I'm a failure, right? Our job as teachers to move students the fastest is to always keep them right there. So you're doing that for yourself.
And also one thing that I teach my students, and the most important thing that I can teach them, is how to teach themselves. And especially my college students, I tell them all the time, in a couple of semesters, you're going to be free of me. You're going to be free of me. And you have to teach yourself how to learn new things all the time. And I watched one of your videos, Dan, and I thought of you this morning because I knew we were about to film a podcast. And I remember that you were talking in one of your videos that what people seem to lose is just that ability to teach themselves. And it's not that over time you don't have it anymore as we get older. It's that you sort of like have to learn how to teach yourself new things. I can't remember the exact words that you used, but I was on the other side of the screen going, absolutely, yes, I'm with Dan. I'm with Dan.
For sure. Yeah, it was about, it's not that you can't teach a dog new tricks. It's that the dog forgot how to learn the tricks it already knew. So you just have to go back and remember it.
Perfect.
So,
perfect.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'm a fan of Dan Spencer.
I'm a fan of Javier Rosario.
You are so much fun to hang out with, man. You're so much fun to hang out with. This is a joy.
I feel exactly the same. I love talking with you about mindset, about music. I think, you're at such a high level of introspection and also your understanding of music. You're such a level of mastery. It is such a blessing that you are gifting me and everyone who's going to watch this video with your time and with your expertise so that we can all learn from the thousands of hours, the tens of thousands of hours you have invested in your life into becoming the musician who you want to be and the version of yourself who you want to be. So thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, your experience with all of us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Everyone go check out Javier's new album. It's called Yes! It is available everywhere you get your music. That's YES with a literal exclamation point. It's Yes. Check it out. Javier Rosario, thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you, Dan.